I want to talk to you about decision making. I think you make decisions every day, and we all do. Probably have made 500 so far.
I remember a couple jobs back doing a spreadsheet, pros and cons, for each job I was interviewing at, and I froze. It was analysis paralysis. I could not make up my mind.
What to wear? Pants? Slacks? Jeans? Should I wear boots? Should I wear comfy shoes? Should I try to make myself look taller? I mean, it's a difficult decision. And then, the hair. Should I part the hair on the left side? Should I part it on the right side? So just once I get out of bed, the decisions start.
Probably mainly at work, because I'm always so afraid of doing something wrong. I don't want to make a mistake.
It's hard to make decisions in crisis because your heart rate is up. There are a lot of variables. There's a lot of kind of white noise that you need to either factor in or push out in order to make good decisions.
When it comes to making decisions, what I typically do is something that one of the speakers mentioned today, was an informed decision, using my resources. What things do I actually know? Going to other people. If it's something big, go to someone who may know better if it's anything that I'm questioning, and just educate myself as best I can. That's pretty much it. And that's the advice that I would give to anybody else. If it's something you're questioning, don't just guess. Just ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
I really try to understand the problem. What is the problem? I try to think about what are the constraints? What do I have to work with? What kind of time do I have? Do I have money limitations? Anything like that. Are there any risks involved?
If somebody's having a hard time making decisions, first let's define what our overall objective or goal is. What's the outcome? Then we want pros and cons. Needs versus wants. Sometimes practicality is the important part. What is more practical, this need, or is it something that we have time to just throw a want in there? And then the risks, is this something that is positive, or is this going to end up in a disaster? And then costs, is this going to cost me, or is there a return on the cost? So there's different ways of making decisions and using processes and methods and writing down. I love a good whiteboard session to write everything down, because you can erase, scratch through, add, scribble, different colors, and highlight.
Personally, I like to throw as many ideas out there. I'll just scrawl things down on a sheet of paper and then spend a little time looking at those ideas and trying to figure out which ones actually make some sense before I actually make a decision. And
Look at two things. One, what are your intrinsic goals, values? How is your life not in line with that? And number two, look at all your outside forces. Kind of analyze that. Is everything in place that it's time to make that decision? Time to take that trip to Italy? Is it time to get a divorce? These kinds of things can be decided by looking at two things: you and the outside forces that affect you.
One of the things I think I would say is one of my pro tips, and this is only as I've gotten a little bit older, is if you can, when you're making a decision, give yourself a little time. Sometimes you don't have to make a decision right away. If you can think things through and then pause and not even consciously reflect on it, but subconsciously, and come back to it the next day, you might have a little bit different perspective. Things might have stewed a little bit, and you can make a little bit better decision.
The situation I want to use is we occasionally have people set their house on fire and keep their family inside. And then they say, well, we're going to shoot the cops or the firefighters when they show up. And it happens probably every 3-4 years in Lincoln County, which is kind of scary. There's three kind of conflict areas going on, because we have an armed subject, we have a fire, which gives us a time constraint, and then we have our unwilling participants who are needing to be saved. Now, the nice thing about this is if we can eliminate any one of these three things, it either buys us time or solves our problem. So, for instance, if we are able to not have the fire involved, then we just have an armed subject with potential hostages. So that eliminates that really dangerous time constraint that we have of the fire burning people up. If we're able to get the family out, we just have an armed subject with a house on fire. So maybe at that point, we're even in a position where we can just leave and let him be armed and alone and have his house on fire. If we eliminate the armed subject, that makes it really easy because we can put out the fire and rescue the family. So the OODA loop is a decision-making process starting with observation. You look at what you're dealing with. In this case, it would be, hey, we've got a house on fire and a guy with a gun. You have to orient yourself. How does this apply to you? And what are you there to do? Then you've got to make a decision, and then you act on that decision. Now, you'll see, after you act on the decision, it moves right back into the observation phase. So what was the impact of that decision, and is the outcome something that is desirable, or do I need to continue moving through this decision-making process? So frame of reference here. So we'll have an observation. There's a guy with a gun, and I want him to drop the gun. I'm a cop, I'm here, and I need to rescue that family. That's my orientation. So my decision, I'm going to ask him to drop the gun. My action, I do it. I vocalize, police, drop the gun. Now, if the guy doesn't drop the gun, I move back into the observation phase and say, well, he didn't drop the gun. It would be probably pretty silly for me to ask him to drop the gun again. So maybe I should try something else. Try a different tactic. Maybe I will say, is your family okay? And change the subject and try to orient on the family a little bit. So it's understanding that as we move through this process, as we do something, we don't just rest on our laurels whether the outcome of that decision was good or bad. We have to move into another decision-making process and keep this going until we can successfully solve the issue. Taking the OODA loop down a little bit, let's say there's a bug. I see the bug fluttering right there. So that's my observation. My orientation is, well, the bug's kind of in my way, and I'm in a car, and I don't want a bug in a car with me. So I decide I'm going to squish the bug. My action, I go and smack it. Unfortunately, that bug's on the outside of the windshield, so my action was ineffective. I need to come up with a new course of action, maybe the windshield wipers. Now say there's a bug in a car with me. I see a bug, it's in the car, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So my orientation is, I'm thinking, I don't know if that bug's going to bite me or sting me, so I'm going to smack it. Well, I reach up and I smack it. That's my action. Well, now what happens? Is the bug dead? Is the bug mad? Is it a bee that's going to sting me? So if I was unsuccessful in smashing that bug the first time, I would have to come up with something new. Like maybe I want to pull over and run for my life. Maybe I want to try to find it in the car and smash it again. Or maybe I should not have smashed it in the first place or attempted to smash it. So again, it's the OODA or OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. And no bugs were harmed in the making of this film.